So there might be some people who choose not to use kind of standard Western notation of the type we've been looking at so far when they write down their music or they find bits of music to learn. And one very important group of people who have their own special way of writing down music are guitarists. Now, while there's no problem writing music down with standard notation for the guitar, and there are lots of composers who have done that already, actually, in more recent times, guitarists have started to use something a bit different, which ties in with the fact that a lot of the music they're going to be learning probably comes from a recording, or there's certainly a recording available of the music they want to learn. And so when you do have a recording of a piece of music that you want to learn, so it's by a band or by a musician whose CD you've got, you can use guitar tablature very usefully, because actually a lot of the information about the music can be sort of obtained. You can learn the piece of music purely by listening to that recording, and you can get lots of information about how the music is supposed to sound and a lot of the rhythmic information, so how the rhythm of the piece works, just by listening to a recording. And so guitar tablature tries to just fill in some of the extra information about the music, which perhaps you can't get so easily from listening to a recording. So a couple of things to note about guitar tablature before we get going. First of all, it's mainly just for guitarists. So what's really good about that is that we can include certain techniques and certain tools when we use this type of notation which are specifically for guitarists, and we can include some of the techniques they most often use when they're playing their instrument. The second thing is that guitar tablature normally comes with some kind of reference recording, so that you can learn a lot of the information that's not stored in the music. And the third thing, of course, is that learning guitar tablature is very easy. And in fact, we can make a start right now. So what is guitar tablature and how does it work? Well, if we have a look at this example here, this is our tab staff here, and it does make a staff. It's lines and spaces, just as we've seen before, but there are some quite important differences that we need to learn about if we were to read guitar tablature. And one of the first is how the lines and spaces relate to the instrument. We saw before that each line and space was a letter name, and we can learn to read music for the piano or the flute just by learning to read how these lines and spaces match on to letter names. With guitar tablature, it's a bit different. So what we have here is actually one line for every string on the guitar. So if you can imagine a guitar normally has 6 strings, and those are mapped directly onto the 6 lines that we see here in the guitar tablature. And so just to finish this first lesson and get us started, I thought I would just label those, and so it's very easy to remember how these map on. So the first string, the lowest string on the guitar, which we represent with this bottom line, is an E. So we will put that in there. And so after that, the second lowest string is the A string. The next string up is the D string. After that comes the G string. Following that comes the B string. And following that is the E string. The top E string. So this is the high end of the guitar, the top end of the guitar, the E string that comes right at the top of the instrument, and this is the lower E that comes right down at the bottom. And so one really important difference is, of course, in guitar tablature we don't use the spaces really at all. All we do is we write numbers onto these 6 lines to show us which frets of the guitar we need to put our fingers on. If you imagine the guitar has lots and lots of frets that run right the way down the neck of the instrument, going from the sort of where the tuning pegs are right at one end, right the way down to where you might play it with a pick or a plectrum, or where you might just strum with your other hand, with your right hand. And so the methods for writing down which frets we should use are just standard numbers. That makes guitar tab very easy to learn, even for a complete beginner. And so we can start to write some music in here. Let's say we wanted someone to play the first fret on the lowest E string. Well, all we need to do is write a number 1 in here. And say we then wanted them to play a note that was the 3rd fret on the D string. We just write a 3 on that line. And we can just keep writing numbers in here, indicating the frets on the instrument that people are going to play. And actually, it's a very natural approach, because that's very similar to the way we play the guitar. We can think about the shapes rather than thinking that's a B, that's an F, that's a C. We can think of it much more easily by just looking at the shapes that we make with our hand on the guitar. And so we can also play chords as well. That's a very common thing to do. So say we wanted to play a standard E chord. Well, we need 3 fingers down, and I think if you can imagine the way we do that on the guitar. So to play this E chord, what we need to do is take our first finger and put it on the first fret of the G string, then take our third finger and second finger and put each of those onto the second fret of the A and D strings, and that will make our normal standard open E chord. So right away we're already starting to read guitar tablature, and it's really as simple as that. All we need to do now is just to get a bit better at it, is to practice getting better at working out where these frets are on the guitar, and maybe some of the common shapes that we'll see when we're playing guitar tablature. And then the other side, of course, is to just look at some of the special markings and special techniques that are specific to the guitar and that help us get better expression and better interpretation of some of the music that we're learning.